Hey, welcome back. Today, I want to talk about how you can drape cloth over your character, like I did here. Or, in this case, I draped a blanket over a wooden crate. And you can use this technique to drape cloth over anything you want. But for this video, I'm going to use this guy to drape the cloth over. I downloaded this model for free on SketchUp a while ago. And I don't know if he's still available, but there are others if you're looking for base meshes. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to do here is hit Shift A and add a plane. And I'll set the size to 1 meter and move it up above the model. Then I'll switch to Edit mode, right click, and Subdivide. Then I'll open up the menu here and I'll increase the number of cuts to 60. And this will give me a good amount of resolution to work with. Next, I'll switch back to Object mode, go to Physics Properties, and I'll hit the Cloth button to add a cloth simulation to the plane. And now I'll come down to the timeline and hit play, but you see the cloth goes right through the model. And that's because the model and the cloth don't know they're supposed to interact with each other. So I'll set the timeline back to 0, and then select the model and go to Physics Properties, and I'll click the collision button to add a collision to the model. Then I'll scroll down here to the soft body and cloth section, and I'll make sure the thickness outer value is set to 0.001, and that'll make sure the cloth conforms closely to the shape of the model. I think the default value is something like 0.015 or something like that. And if I leave it at the default, the cloth will be floating up above the model and it won't look right. So you might have to experiment with this amount to get the cloth to drape over your model correctly. Next, I'll select the cloth, right click, and shade smooth. And I'll go to the modifiers panel and add a subdivision surface modifier. And I'll bump the viewport level up to 2. But you can see the corners are rounding quite a bit, so I'll switch to Edit mode and use the Loop Cut tool to add some support edges here on all 4 sides. And that will help make the corners a little more squared off. But it looks like I accidentally got 2 loop cuts here, so I'll double click to select this one and then right click and dissolve edges. And now I'll switch back to object mode, and when I hit play you see it's starting to work, but there are some issues with the cloth intersecting itself, and the cloth folds are bunching up and it's not looking very good. So I'll set the timeline back to 0, and with the cloth selected I'll come back over to the physics properties and make some adjustments. For the quality steps, I'll bump this up to 15, and I'll leave all these other settings at their defaults, but I'm going to change the bending model to linear. And then I'll scroll down to the bottom, and in the collision section, I will enable self collisions. And this will make sure the cloth will collide with itself and not intersect and pass through itself. And while I'm here, I'll change the distance values to 0.001, and I'll set the collision quality to 10. And now I'll hit play again, and you see the cloth isn't intersecting with itself anymore, and it's looking a lot more realistic. But the cloth is very thin, like paper, which is not what I want. So again, I'll pull the timeline slider back to 0. Then I'll go to the modifier panel and add a Solidify modifier. And I'll set the thickness to 0.001, so it just has a little bit of thickness. And now I'll hit play again. And that's looking really good. The only problem is it's coming down directly on top of the character, equally on all sides. And I want it shifted over slightly to the back so you can see his face. So I'll pull the timeline slider back to 0 and then move the cloth over. But now when I hit play, it's sliding right off the back of his head. So I need to pin the cloth to keep it from falling off. So I'll pull the timeline back to 0 again, and I'll hit the number 1 key on the number pad to switch to front view. And I'm going to move the cloth down so it's sitting just slightly above the top of his head. And now with the cloth selected, I'll come over here to Object Properties. The Object Data Properties. And right here next to this Vertex Groups box, I'll click the plus button to add a new vertex group, and I'll rename it to Pin. And now I'll switch to Edit Mode and Vertex Selection, and I'll hit the number 7 key on the number pad to switch to Top View, and I'll also hit Alt-Z to switch to X-ray mode, so I can see the model underneath. And I need to move the cloth over slightly, so this row of vertices is sitting on the Y-axis line. So I'll hit A to select all the vertices, and then I'll move the cloth over to align with the Y-axis. And now I'm going to select this single vertex right here that's closest to the origin. And then I'll come back over to Object Data Properties, and I'll click this Assign button to assign that vertex to the vertex group. And now I'll switch back to Object Mode, hit Alt-Z to get out of X-ray mode, and I'll go back over to the Physics panel and scroll down to the bottom to this Shape section. And right here where it says Pin Group, I'll click inside this box, and then I'll select the vertex group that I created. And now when I hit play, the simulation runs, but the cloth doesn't slide off of his head, which is perfect. But you might notice a little depression or flat spot here at the top where the vertex is pinned. But that's easy to fix. All you have to do, as long as you're happy with the overall look and you don't want to make any more adjustments, just come over to the Modifiers panel and apply the Cloth modifier. And now you can switch to Edit Mode and adjust the vertices to smooth out the area top. And there you go. So that's about it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.